Okay. Yud Amad Beis. So we'll start. Amar Ula. It's about 11, 12 lines from the bottom. I think Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. It's about learning Hashem the Beis Hamikdash. Would we bring a carbon Pesach? Pesach Sheni? Yes, so we didn't bring a Pesach Rishon. We bring a Pesach Sheni. Also for Shlema. Me, my father, Tali ben Menachem Bela. Okay, this Gemara that we're going to learn today, tomorrow, is sort of like not directly connected to what we've been talking about. We've been talking about these karbanos that are brought. Someone that contaminates the Beis Hamikdash. He doesn't know that he's tamei. He enters when he's tamei. But ultimately, it's going to connect it. So that's why I brought it in here. It goes like this: Amar Ula, Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Ula was a traveler, and he says over statements in the name of Rabbi Yechanan that Rabbi Yechanan said in Eretz Yisrael. He said the following statement. He said, "Tmidim Ula Amar Ula Amar Rabbi Yechanan." Says the name of Rabbi Yechanan. Tmidim Shleichut Chol Tzibur. What happened was every year they would buy karbanos from the money that was allocated for karbanos. It was given by the Machzas HaShekel. During Adar, everyone would give their Machzas HaShekel. And then they would have a new collection, remember from Maseches Shavuos Daf, and they would take money from that and they would purchase new karbanos. Now, in the Beis Hamikdash, they always had 6 animals that were designated to be the carbon tamid. They always had, because they were checking them over the few days before, so they would always have 6 animals. And now, comes out as on the last day, V'adar, they would have 6 animals there. That was the rule; they had to have 6 animals there, but they would only use 2 of them. The other 4 animals they wouldn't use the next day or the day after, because they would need to take the new money from the new collections. So you always had 4 animals that were left over. So tmidim shleichut shechol letzibur. These animals that were not necessary for the congregation because they had a new collection. They had 4 that were left over from the previous year. The year doesn't mean Rosh Hashanah. The year means Nisan. Niftin tmimim. You can redeem them from being designated from a sacrifice. And you could redeem them, and then you could maybe purchase them again for the following year. Whatever the case is, they could be redeemed, even though they were designated as sacrifices. Okay. Yosef Rabba v'kamalashmait. Well, Ula said this over, and Rabba says it over what Ula said. Amalei Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda says to Rabba, Man sayis lachal Rabbi Yechanan Rabba. Who's going to listen to you and to Rabbi Yechanan, your teacher? And he explains this question. One part that's interesting here is that Rabbi Yechanan is considered a teacher of Rabba. I don't know if we have that clear. That Rabba learned by Rabbi Yechanan, but I guess this is clear enough. Rabbi Yechanan is in Eretz Yisrael. Rabba's in Bavel, but it could be he went there. It says, Rav Chizda says, where did the holiness go? You see, to redeem a sacrifice, it had to become a balmum. There was a sacrifice, it was designated. You couldn't just say, okay, now I'm going to take the holiness off, unless you left it in the barn and it got a blemish. They say, okay, now that it can't be brought as a sacrifice, now it could be redeemed. And then you would redeem it, and now the money would get holy. Money would become holy. The sacrifice would go out. You could check the animal because it was a regular animal now. You couldn't work it. You had special halachas about it, even though it's not holy anymore, but because it used to be holy, there's special halachas. But you could shecht it and eat it. And then the money that you redeemed it with would now go towards another sacrifice because that was consecrated now. Took the consecration off, it went onto the money. So here, what he's saying is that where did the holiness go? You can't get holiness off unless it gets a mum, and you're telling me that you can just redeem it without a mum. No, it's more than potential. It was consecrated.
Yeah, but it was part of the 6, and they could have used it, but they ended up using
Other two.
But then the next year, yeah, they could just replace those 2 that they use, or they could replace all 6.
The next year they have to replace all 6 because they need to buy it with the new money. They're going to buy it with the new money. So they deconsecrate it, and buy it again. But how do you deconsecrate it? How do you get the consecration off without a mum?
Mikvah.
Mikvah makes things holy.
Oh,
That's what we're suggesting. That it should be like Maseches Sheni. That's what Rabbi is saying, that you just redeem it. And we're saying, careful, there's a mosquito flying around. We're saying that it's that no, that's not how it works by a carbon. Carbon needs it to get a blemish.
no other way to desanctify it without a blemish.
No.
So give it a blemish.
So, yeah, if it would have a blemish, then we wouldn't have any question over here. We're saying you don't need to do the blemish. So, Amarle, so Rabba responds to Rav Chizda. Atle Tizbra, Tlayamrina Kedusha Shbem Leichan Holcha. Rabba says, you yourself, you actually hold that this is a good question. Where did the holiness go? Don't you hold that we don't say that? Where did the holiness? We don't ask that question. Where did the holiness go? I'll prove it to you. There's Vatanan that we don't ask this question. Say Meiser Akteris Mayasimba. If there's leftover from the Kteris, which there was every year, because they would take Yom Kippur, they would grind up a whole section, a whole 3 mana extra, and they would only take a scoopful of that. So there was always going to be extra. And then after a bunch of years, 67 years, remember they would collect all of the extras from each year, like we say in the Kteris. Well, what would they do with this extra? They would have, what they would do is like this. They would designate, you have to drop the word mimena, and then it works. They would designate money to pay for the workers that were there making the ketairos. There were workers that they had to pay. Now, they would designate money for them. Then they would take the ketairos, and instead of paying they would take the extra ketairos. Instead of paying the workers the money, they would deconsecrate the ketairos, put the holiness onto the money. Right, the holiness onto the money. And then they would give the ketairos to the workers, and then they would purchase the ketairos back from the workers. That was not, they would give the ketairos as payment to the workers. And then when it changed hands, they would purchase it back from them, giving them the money, purchasing it back for the Beis Hamikdash, and then they could reuse it. So the previous years could get reused. Yes, like some comments. Okay. Question is, my name is Kedush Ben Leichan Olcha. Rabba says to Rav Chizda, 1 second, there's no mum. How did you get the holiness off? There's no such thing as a mum. How did you get the holiness off the ketairos to be able to deconsecrate it and then purchase it back for the following year? How did you do that? Obviously, you don't say this thing you don't say this kedusha shabem heichel halcha when it comes to the community. It's only by a private sacrifice where you would say that. How do you get the holiness up? But by the community, you don't say it. Malay, Rav Chizda says, your proof that you're bringing to me from the Ketairos Ka'amrit, you're proving it to me from the Ketairos. Shani Ketairos is so different. You can't prove from there. Bring proof from a Ketairos regarding the animals. Ketairos, the Kedushas Damimu. That's just consecrated in value. You see, there's two types of consecration. There's one which is called Kedushas Haguf. It means it's intrinsically holy. And one that the value is holy. It's not intrinsically holy. A sacrifice is Kedushas Haguf. The animal itself becomes holy. You're going to actually sacrifice this animal on the altar. Kedushas Damim, the damim means money. The value is when it's not something that it's going to be an offering itself. I gave my I don't know, samovar to the Beis Hamikdash. They're going to do with it. They're going to sell it, and then with the money they're going to use it to do something. So it's not. I gave value. I gave something of value. So he said the Ketores is not intrinsically holy. The Ketores at this point is only something of value. It's only Kedushas Damim. When would the Ketores get intrinsically holy? After you put it into a vessel, a holy vessel, but it was never in a holy vessel. It was only in the grinder. And the grinder doesn't make it holy. Yeah, something like that. So Rav Chisda responds, he says, you're bringing me a proof that you can deconsecrate the Ketores, and that's a proof that you don't say, where did the holiness go? You can't ask that question because you deconsecrate it. Says that's a different story. That's not fully holy. That's just Kedushas Damim. So Rabbah responds to that. If it's not fully holy, then why does it become tamei if someone touches it? You see, there's a certain level of impurity, which only which only it's only but give off, but only contract impurity if the item itself is holy. That's we're talking about a tful yom, someone that went to the mikvah already. He has to wait for nightfall. So he's waiting for nightfall to become fully pure. But if he touches something that's holy during that time, he went to the mikvah already, so he's basically pure, but not 100%. He has to wait for nightfall, and that in the interim would make something that was consecrated impure, even though he went to the mikvah already. So we're saying over here that the Ketores is not fully holy.
Isn't there a lav asher kach kamayu? You're not allowed to own or have any type of Ketores?
Yeah, it's interesting. Does that mean to make it? Or does that mean to own it?
If you made it and then you owned it, you were over on the lav.
Right. So this was made for the Beis Hamikdash, but maybe the lav isn't to own. Maybe it's only to make. I'm just looking if Tosfos mentions anything about that. I don't see anything. I don't see. I guess it's only to make. I didn't use the other Gemara. That's the commentary. Okay. I'm sorry, Hilla. What are you asking?
It was just considered like almost together. But they were like different. All the spices were separate. It wasn't considered.
No, but it's already mixed together. It's mixed together. We're asking if Rav Chisda is correct. Rav Chisda claims that the Ketores is Kedushas Damim, not Kedushas Haguf. Its only value is holy, but it's not intrinsically holy. And therefore, it could be redeemed without any blemish. It's a good comparison to the sacrifice. No, sorry, not a good comparison. Rabbah said it's a comparison to the sacrifice because it's both Kedushas Haguf. And since you see in the Mishnah that Ketores could be redeemed, So to a sacrifice, a community sacrifice could be redeemed. Because this says it's not a good comparison. Because the Keteris is Kedushas Damim. So Rabbi responds back, if it's Kedushas Damim, then why does it become Tameh when a Tvil Yom touches it? Because Allah Tanya, why was it taught in a Brisa? Nastim b'machteshas. If you put the Keteris into the grinder, Nif Selas b'Tvil Yom, it becomes Tameh as a Tvil Yom. But from when a Tvil Yom touches, Tvil Yom means that he went to the mikvah already, has to wait for nightfall. And this is a very slight impurity that would only contract impurity with something that was Kedusha Saguf. See, he's proving it that the Keteris is intrinsically holy because it's already been in the grinder. And the grinder was belonged to the Beis Hamikdash. Once it's in the vessel, like the grinder of the Beis Hamikdash, so then it becomes holy. And therefore, the fact that you can redeem it is a good proof that you can also redeem a sacrifice that was left over. So Rabbah himself is responding back to Rav Chisda. Maybe you're going to try to answer me the following. Well, let me tell you, it's not a good answer. But what is this? Says maybe you want to tell me that Kedushas Damim also has, that my question is not a good question. I was assuming that only Kedushas Aguf becomes Tameh with the Tvil Yom. And then that would prove that the Keteris is Kedushas Aguf. But maybe you want to answer that Kedushas Damim, if the value is holy, that's also going to contract impurity through a Tvil Yom. But it was taught in the Mishnah, Menachos. We throw in another concept over here, Menachos, right? We were going from sacrifices to the Keteris, now to the meal offering, Menachos. Mayolim Behem, you're not allowed to make personal use of the Mincha, Mishahuktashu, once you consecrate it. Once you say, I'm bringing this to the Beis Hamikdash, you can't have personal use from that flour or oils. Kidshu Bekeli, if you did more than just consecrate it, you brought it to the Beis Hamikdash and you put it into the holy vessel of the Beis Hamikdash, now it's ready. Huchshru means it's ready. It's fit to become impure if B'Tvil Yom touches it. And also Chosek Kippurim is the person that doesn't bring his sacrifice of Belina, and it also if it's left overnight becomes invalid. Now the Gemara says like this. Now Rabbah says like this: Kitchu Bekeli. It's only if you put it into an actual vessel will it become tummy from its full yom. But like Kitchu Bekeli, but if it wasn't put into the vessel, even though it's already consecrated with a monetary consecration, right? It doesn't become tummy. So it must be that it's only kedusha saguf that becomes tummy with full yom. That tells me that Keteris is kaddish with kedusha saguf, which means that the Keteris is a good comparison to karbanos.
When the vessel is considered like acquired,
yeah, it becomes more holy once it's in. Becomes intrinsically holy once it's in the vessel of the Beis Hamikdash. So Elamai. Okay, so the Gemara says back must Elamai kedusha sagufu. So it must be that it's kedusha saguf. Back to the question, oh no, not back to the question. Now we have a new question. This would be Rav Chisda's question to Rabbah. Rav Chisda is now asking, if you think that it's kedusha saguf, the way you're putting it, that the Keteris, once it's ground, becomes kedusha saguf, and why does Rabbah want to say that? Because he wants to say that the same way I can redeem Keteris, I can also redeem a sacrifice, those 4 remaining sacrifices at the end of the year without a blemish. He says, if that's the case, that is kedusha saguf. Rav Chisda says, how is it allowed to stay overnight? You should have to finish it all the first day. All the Keteris, all 365 portions of Keteris, you have to finish in the first day of the year. Allah Matanan, why was it taught in the Mishnah, HaKaimetz? That's the scoop that's taken out of a mincha, the 3 fingers. Balavaina and the frankincense, which is also from a mincha. And V'HaKteris, and the Keteris, okay. Uminchas Kayanim, and the mincha that the Kayanim, that a Kayan brings, which you don't do the scoop, you burn the whole thing, right? You do the scoop, but you don't just burn the scoop. Uminchas Kayan Mashuach, and the mincha of the Kayan Gadol, which is called the Chavite Kayan Gadol. Uminchas nesachim, and the mincha that's brought with the libations. Every animal had that you brought. You brought a certain amount of flour together with it. 3 isarin for this animal, 2 isarin for that animal. So this is called the minchas nesachim because it comes together with the wine. Any of these types of things, there's me'ila. That means there's prohibited to have personal benefit from any of those once it's been consecrated. Kidsha b'keli, once it's put into a holy vessel, and it's after they do the scoop or after they take out all of those meal offerings and they put it into the holy vessel, then it's ready to become tameh if its full yom touches it. Went to the next level up of holiness. So therefore, it's easier to contract tamah. Mechusik Kippurim or Mechusik Kippurim. I guess it means the Mechusik Kippurim can't eat from it, or it means the Mechusik Kippurim can't touch it. Mechusik Kippurim is someone that was tummy that didn't bring his sacrifice yet, so he's forbidden to eat from any. Whatever the case is, Ubelina, and also with staying overnight. You see, Kitshu Bekeli, once the meal offering was put into the vessel. And the same thing would apply to the Ketairos. Once the Ketairos was put into the holy vessel, that's when it becomes holy, that it becomes can't stay overnight. Like Kitshu Bekeli, if it was never put into the vessel, even though it was already in the grinder, but it wasn't put into the holy vessel, the grinder's not enough. Then it won't be. Then it won't become puzzle for staying overnight. So Rav Chisda is telling Rabbah that I'm going to prove it to you that it's not Kedushas Aguf. If it would be Kedushas Aguf, it would become invalid the very first day that it was made. It must be that it's only Kedushas Damim, it's only monetary, it's only consecrated for its value. Otherwise, you would be in trouble. Amarle, so Rabbah responds back. He says, Lina Kamrit, you're worried about the Ketairos staying overnight? When it comes to other sacrifices, you can't leave things overnight, because if they're left overnight, it changes its freshness. It changes its appearance. But the Ketairos, it stays overnight. It's no problem. It stays overnight. It's like a potato. The whole year. You don't need it. It doesn't need to go in the fridge or anything. You leave it out. It's fine. It's good.
Still starts growing a science project.
Yeah. Okay. So Ketairos doesn't have the issue of Lina. That's how we respond. This is Rabbah responding back to Rav Chisda. You're worried about Lina, and therefore you're telling me that it can't be Kedushas Aguf. Kasha, the Gemara says, Kedusha Sheben Leichan Holcha. But what are you going to do with Rav Chisda's original question? You told me you can't ask that question, but why not? Rabbah responds to that original question. When this was originally consecrated, any sacrifice or anything that belongs to the congregation that was originally consecrated by the congregation, not by individuals. So the Leiv Bezdin, the intention of the court, of the Kayanim or the Beis Hamikdash that consecrates it, they consecrate it with a certain condition that if it's going to be needed, then it's going to be holy, and if it's not going to be needed, it's going to go out. That was like this original intention when it was made. That's Rabbah's explanation here. So there was a condition on this whole thing.
Me. That's for me. Wow.
Okay. Amalei Abaya. Okay, now Abaya steps in. Until now, it was a question from Rav Chisda arguing with Rabbah. Now Abaya steps in. Tell me about another.
For today.
Wow.
Wow.
Chaim, look what we have here. It's not mixed, but it's apparently the types of the Ketairos.
11? Are there 11?
Oh,
Are there 11? Yeah, let's see.
goodness.
1, 2, 3,
Beautiful.
4,
I didn't
5,
make
6,
it.
7,
That
8,
is
9,
a
10,
treat.
11. There are 11 here.
That is beautiful.
I got the present many years ago.
That is Unbelievable.
Overnight, it kept it more than
That's
overnight.
interesting. I didn't even know what these things look like.
Is that a gift or just, are you
Sure,
giving
it's-
that to Rabbi Smith?
If Rabbi Smith wants it, he can have
He
it. as a
wants
gift.
it. Look how excited he is.
It has,
He's
it says over
pretty
here,
excited.
the pictures, well, it's not pictures, it's like, little vials of balsam, clove, sorry is balsam.
Right.
Clove, galbanum is galbanum. Levina, the frankincense, we've seen frankincense before, I've not brought that. Myrrh,
Myrrh.
I've never seen myrrh. Cassia is cassia. Spikenard,
Spikenard.
have you ever seen spikenard before?
What's the Hebrew?
Nerd.
Nerd. New.
No, I guess you add the spick and it's nerd.
Ah, don't say
Spikenard.
that.
Huh?
What you just said is not.
We've seen plenty of nerds.
Yeah, it's in there right
I was
here.
thinking of the.
Saffron. Is this real saffron? That's probably
I
expensive.
have no idea.
Very
What's the expensive gift?
This is a gift from me
It's
to you,
Costas.
Rabbi Smith.
Kilufa
Just
is
for the
musket
record.
nut bark, and kinamin is cinnamon. That's an easy
This
one.
was given by Yitzi Lebensberger too.
If you'd like it, you can have
No,
it.
no, no.
It's
keep
just
it, keep
sitting
it,
in
keep
my
it.
closet. you
Itzy,
know.
don't give up on the buzzer.
For teaching purposes,
Wow.
here's a gift for you.
Oh.
Been gifted with,
That's a good gift.
Just
Amazing.
re-gifted. I don't know if that's.
Gift from
I'm gonna
Yitzi
bring it to the
Lebensberger
yeshiva. I'll show the
That's
Rabbi
right.
Smith.
By the way, did you read what I sent you yesterday? Because I
Yeah, you
heard
were
you.
telling me,
You had it, said Dr. Stein, I know,
Shit,
maybe
yeah.
that's all I could.
Dr. Stein, the rest of the year would like to move on.
Goes back to.
Dr.
Prague.
Shear, Dr. Stein, the rest of this year would like to move on.
This was from yesterday.
Where's the alarm?
no, he sent me about the Chad Gadi because I asked what was the goat we were talking
Chad
about.
Gadi.
The two. Yeah. So he quoted from the Gra. He sent me. Okay.
Are these usable? They're just.
No, Professor, Professor, we're on the shear now.
No,
Open it up.
It's a closed.
It's a gift.
It's not closed. It's not closed. It collected.
What's closed?
Okay. So we just figured out how it works, how you're allowed to redeem it, because Rabbah says that that Leif best in Masnalim, there was a condition that was made when it was originally consecrated that if it's not going to be needed for it to be brought, then they're going to take it out from the holiness and they'll do with it what they need to do. Abaya says to Rabbah, "Hamaru da Amar." 1 second. Master Abaya says to Rabbah, Rabbah is Abaya's teacher. He says, but the master said, "Hikdish zachar ledamav kadosh kadosh zaguch." That if a person consecrates an animal and he claims that I'm not consecrated for a sacrifice, I'm consecrating it for just for its value. That's what he claims when he's consecrating it. Doesn't matter. It becomes intrinsically holy for as if it's a sacrifice. So if that's the case, then it should automatically become holy. In other words, the higher level of holiness should automatically take effect, even though you're claiming that it's not going to be that holy. But the holiness doesn't do that. The holiness takes effect on anything that could be holy. Once you consecrate it a little bit, the full holiness takes effect. So the Gemara answers like Kasha. There's different ways of consecrating. If he consecrates a male offering, which could be an oila, a male animal, he consecrates it, and he says that I'm consecrating this to be the value of an oila, then automatically it becomes an oila, and it's not just kedushas damim, it's kedushas guf, comes intrinsically holy. But if he says I'm consecrating this for the value of the libation offering that I bring, and meanwhile this is an animal, then it doesn't become a sacrifice because he consecrated for a different type of holiness. So that holy, only if it's consecrated for the value of an oila would it become an oila. So what's happening here by the
That's
entire
beautiful what you just said. That's why Jews, even if they're not going to do the right thing or Tinich Nishba, we're still okay because Asher Kadesh Shanu b'mitzvasav. God already was Makadesh us, so we're already holy,
Right.
even if we haven't done anything.
Right.
Is it right?
Very nice.
Right.
So if that's the case, what happens is like this. We have to go back to the original statement of Rabbi Yochanan. what happens with the with the sacrifices that are left over from that year? They're redeemed, and with that redemption, those sacrifices are redeemed. With that redemption, they use it to buy the gold for the Kedesh HaKadoshim that they would have to. It was surrounded in plates of gold, and they would use that for the, so which means basically that when it was consecrated, it was consecrated with the intention that the Lev Bezdin was Mastalem, that if it's not necessary, we're going to use it for something else. So it had a different sort of holiness on it, not sacrifice holiness. Okay. We hold them here. Now the Gemara asks a question.
Wait, the question on the page was where have all the flowers gone? Yeah, where did the Kedusha go?
So we said because Lev Bezdin Mastalem was put on only with a condition. We said, but that condition, but those types of things don't work. We said it depends what type of condition. If it was, if you consecrate something, then it should become holy with this type of holiness. You consecrate it for a sacrifice, and you say it should be only the value of the sacrifice. Then it becomes holy like a sacrifice. But if you say for a different type of holiness, it should be used for something else, monetary use for something else. So then the holiness doesn't take effect on it.
So how does it fit in when the person is Mekadesh Amanas that become a chassid and he's not? So which one of those things is it? Because we say the Kiddush, right?
Masha and Tzadik Amar?
Yeah.
That's something else. That's Mekadesh. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Eisvei Abaya. Abaya has a question. You remind me of this guy that had a question. He said, when you do Kiddush Levana, how are you Mekadesh the Levana without a Shava Pruta?
Sorry.
So he answered that there's a Mishnah in Kedushin that if a person dances in front of the bride, so that could have value. So he says, Kshem Shani Reikid Kenegde, as we say in Kiddush Levana, that just like I'm dancing in front of, so that was his answer.
Great answer.
It's cute. It was
better than cute.
There was a guy in Lakewood when I was there. His name was Reb Moshe Abba Kamyan. He was like an old from before the war. He was an old bacher. Actually, they told us that his wife was killed by the Nazis under the chuppah.
Oh my God!
So anyway, he would wander around in the yeshiva. And he was just like an older guy, and he would like schmooze with you. He made copies of things, he had like long copies, like a wafer and Kennedy, and just all types of stuff. Yeah, copy. Anyway, so that was one of his jokes was that how you Mekadesh the Levana. Okay, so
with a gato. Or take a coin out of your pocket, hold it up. It's about the same size as the moon.
Eisvei Abaya. Abaya has a question to Rabbah. Parvasar Shal Yom Kippurim, the sacrifices that were brought on Yom Kippur, Sha'avdu, that they were lost. V'hifr Shacherim Tachteim, and other sacrifices were designated to be brought because he lost some of them, right? And the same thing would apply if there was a goat if the congregation worshipped Avodah Zarah, and they have to bring a special type of sacrifice. It was because of Psak that the Destin said that, and they ended that this is okay to do, and they ended up doing that. They had a special sacrifice. They lost the sacrifice. They brought other sacrifices in this place. Kulon Yamusu. So what do you do with the new ones? You put them to death. Div Rabbi Yehuda. That's what Rabbi Yehuda says. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon Aimer, Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua, and Rabbi Shimon. They say, you let them get a mum. You don't put it to death. You let it get a mum, then you sell it, because once it gets a mum, it can't be a blemish, it can't be brought as a sacrifice. And the value that you sold it for, that money that you get, goes into the Nadava, goes as a donation to the Beis Hamikdash, which is probably brought as other sacrifices. And Shein Chatas Tzibur Mesa, because community sacrifices don't get put to death. Gemara asks, Abaya is asking, if you tell me that every time there's a community sacrifice, it's always leiv bezdin masnaleim, that there's an intention there, that there's a condition, automatic, it's consecrated with a condition that if it's necessary, it's going to be holy, and if it's not necessary, then we're going to use it for something else, right? So why over here didn't they do that? Why didn't they say that it's that there's leiv bezdin masnaleim? Why do we have to wait till it gets a mum? Just redeem it right away. If it's not necessary, we would have had that condition. The Gemara answers, Avudim Kamet. This is Rabbah responding to Abai, talking about things that are lost. Shani Avudim D'lei Shchichi. It's not common. So if something that's not common, Bezdin doesn't put a condition on. When I have 4 sacrifices every year that are left over, when I have Keteris that's left over every, so then the Bezdin could be Masna, could be make a condition. Every year I have left over. That's the way it's set up. So there's a condition. But something that's not common, so we don't have to make conditions, things that just in case something might happen. Okay. Hillel, you wanted to ask something? Yeah. Shchicha means frequent in Gemara.
Okay.
But shchicha is figure. Shchichi. Okay. Baripara, the shchicha, 1 second. You're claiming that something that's infrequent, you don't make a condition, but take a look at the paraduma. Vitanya, para niftis al kol psul shaba. You can redeem a paraduma anytime if there's any invalidation there. Mesa, even if it died, tifta, you can redeem it. What are you going to do with it? I don't know. But you can redeem it. Nishchataf was shechted, tifta, you can redeem it. Matzacheres noimena. If you find a better animal, a nicer one, tifta, you redeem it. Now, a paraduma is very not common. It's there were only 7 of them, 9 altogether, right? The 10th Mashiach is going. It's 7 during the time of the Beis Hamikdash. Shachta al gabi marachta. Let's say it was shechted on its the higher pile. Ein laptia ilamis. Then you can't redeem it. So that's already too late. But the other cases. Other cases, you can redeem it, which means that why are you allowed to redeem it? Because they leiv bezdin masnalem, even though it's been consecrated, but the bezdin put a condition on it. Yeah, well, or it's that if we're not going to use it for whatever reason, even because we find a better one, whatever the case is, we're going to use it. So he answers shani parak the kachi bedek abayasi, because that's not intrinsically holy. What he's asking now is that if it's something that's infrequent, you told me that we don't say leiv bezdin masnalem. So we're answering that I don't need a leiv bezdin masnalem because it's not so holy. It's a different sort of holiness. Kachi bedek abayas. Yochi, if that's the case, if it's kachi bedek abayas, then and I'm just redeeming it like that. Yochi meisa nishkata tifta. What do you mean you redeem it if it dies? But anything that's been consecrated, not with and you're taking it out not because it was deconsecrated because of a condition. It still has that little bit of holiness, that's there of bedek abayas, of monetary value. Then it has to be redeemed by standing it up and evaluating it. And because it's dead, you can't do that. The special halachas of selling, of deconsecrating something that's been consecrated, you have to stand it up and get the value of it. And you can't do this if it's dead. My answer is Hamani Reb Shimon we say we're following the opinion of Reb Shimon. And Reb Shimon holds that my items that were consecrated to the temple fund, that not consecrated as sacrifices, but just to the temple fund, don't need Hamad Varach, they don't need to be stood up. And so therefore this animal that's dead, that can't be stood up, according to Reb Shimon, fine, you could redeem it like that. We're following the view of Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon, if you're following the view of Reb Shimon, then you have other trouble. Seifa, if you read a little bit further, it says Shachtal Gabi Marach, it can never be redeemed. But the Brisa says Reb Shimon I'm a paramitamet masaychlin, hayil v'haisla shasa kaisha. That the paraduma gives off the impurity of food. And it could receive and give off impurity of food. Food, once it's a kazayas, can give off impurity. Rish Lakish, and Rish Lakish explains, why is a paraduma giving off impurity of food if it contracts something that's tummy that would contract tuma, but it's not food? It's as Reb Shimon says, no, it could be food because it could be redeemed even after it's slaughtered on the proper place of where they slaughter it. It still could be redeemed, which means it still could be edible. So it's potentially food. But 1 second, the Brisa, the Mishnah that you quoted, the Brisa that you quoted, says that it cannot be redeemed. And if it's Reb Shimon, then it could be redeemed. So it can't be the opinion of Reb Shimon.
Wait, how can you have an Amora arguing with Shimon's Tanya?
No, what's happening here is that Rish Lakish is explaining why does Reb Shimon hold that a paraduma contracts food impurity? The answer is because it could be redeemed. Reb Shimon holds that it could be redeemed even after it's been slaughtered. It could be redeemed after it's slaughtered, then that contradicts the Mishnah. We were explaining the Mishnah only fits with Reb Shimon, who says that if it's monetary value, it doesn't need to be stood up in order to be redeemed, so we were following Reb Shimon, but it can't be following Reb Shimon because there's another case in this Mishnah that says that once it's been slaughtered on the altar, it can't be redeemed. Reb Shimon holds, according to Rish Lakish, that it could be redeemed.
Rish Lakish holds a point.
Rish Lakish explains Reb Shimon. Ela shani para hayel v'demei yikarin. We have a different explanation here. Normally, we said that we don't say leiv bezdin masnaleh. We don't say that the court puts a condition on anything that's infrequent. And so, based on that, we said that sacrifices that are lost, there's a machlekes if they get, and then they're found, there's a machlekes if they're put to death or if they have to get a mum. We asked, what about leiv bezdin masnaleh? Why do they need a mum? Maybe they were consecrated with a condition. So we don't say consecrated with a condition on anything that's infrequent. We said, but by the paraduma, it seems like you do say that, and the paraduma is infrequent. We said, yeah, paraduma is infrequent, but it's so valuable that they lay best in masna aleim, just in case if we're not going to use it, it should be it shouldn't be fully consecrated shouldn't be consecrated if we're not going to use it. However, regular sacrifice, which doesn't have that value, so then we don't say lay best masna aleim unless it's something that's common. Okay, should we leave it over here? Amar Mar. Okay, let's leave it. Amar Mar. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good day.
No tachnan today.
No tachlan, yeah. You eat matzah.